when I first got the diagnosis, that night I was just remember being at home and going through my thoughts, and very quickly the notion, or the a bit of anger, really, I guess, to actually not let Parkinson's rule my life anymore. For as long as I can, I'm still going to do what I want to do. I'm still the boss. Parkinson's will just have to wait its turn. And the reason I'm so determined to do these sort of things that I do is on a personal level, to sort of stick two fingers up to Parkinson's and say, no, I'm not going to sit at home and watch Netflix and just sort of vegetate and lead a sedentary lifestyle because I've got Parkinson's. I am going to do crazy things, and I still do.
Welcome to another episode of the Running Tales podcast. I'm Craig Lewis, and this week's guest is Neil Russell. When Neil was diagnosed with Parkinson's back in 2018, one of his first thoughts was whether he'd still be able to run. With the answer a resounding yes, vigorous exercise, his doctor said, stimulates the brain, Neil has taken his running to rather more extreme degrees. Having already run from John O'Groats to Land's End last year, he's currently training to take on an incredible 970-mile run from London to Barcelona in just over 5 weeks, finishing in time to attend the World Parkinson's Congress on the 4th of July. I spoke to Neil about his current training regime, which has involved 28-mile runs every day, how his running has allowed him to say a big no to Parkinson's, and first of all, how the condition affects him on a daily basis and in his running.
I have a dominant tremor Parkinson's, which means that my right hand is constantly, 99% of the time, it's constantly tremoring away. And my left hand is sort of coming out in support of that by also starting to become a sort of tremor as well. 99% of the time, I just get on with it, and it doesn't really bother me too much. But occasionally, because I'm only human, it does sort of get me down. And when I'm running, it can cause tendonitis in my wrist. And if anyone's ever had tendonitis, they know how painful that can be. And that is one of the few things that can actually stop me from running. My other symptoms that I have with regards to running is that I have a tendency to fall over more than the average runner. My sense of balance is worse when I start to tire and when I fatigue. And my scars on my knee are proof of that. I've had some quite close shaves with oncoming fast-moving traffic whilst crossing the road and falling over, and it's quite scary to sort of think of what could have happened. I sometimes also become a bit disorientated and a bit sort of where am I? What's going on here? This doesn't last for very long, and that's linked more to the medication than it is the actual Parkinson's. And again, it can be quite unnerving. I've also got a problem with my voice. It tends to go very low and quiet, and I'm not conscious of it. So if I start to sort of whisper, you might need to just sort of politely ask me to raise the volume a little bit, because I'm not aware of it. And on the voice, I've just started to enter another phase of symptoms for Parkinson's, which is losing my way. I can be in mid-conversation, a non-stressful conversation with a friend or anybody for that matter, and I just completely lose my train of thought. And this is a common Parkinson's condition. And when this happens, I momentarily go blank and I think, oh my goodness, I don't know what to say. I can't remember what I was talking about. And then usually it'll come back to me, and then I'm able to sort of carry on as per normal. And people that know me, they don't get stressed at all about it, because they know that that's what Neil is like. That's what happens to Neil. But people that don't know me sort of get a little bit oh, what do we do? It's one of those sort of difficult moments when you're not quite sure what to say or what to do. But that's a relatively recent one, and it's usually when a lot of my symptoms occur when I'm tired, and I'm in today, for instance, I've done 28 miles running. I did 28 miles yesterday as well, and I've got a marathon to do tomorrow.
Wow.
So when I'm tiring, all these symptoms become more evident and more common. And I'm supposed to rest in the afternoons and sleep, but I'm not very good at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon going to have a lie down. I think I'm being a bit lazy, or I should be doing something, because I know we haven't come on to it yet, but my latest challenge, which is running from London to Barcelona, the logistics on this are so huge that there's always something that needs to be done. And we're going in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I think it's 2 or 3 weeks time we're going. And my partner has done an amazing job in trying to coordinate everything. And it's you'd need an hour or two to be able to go through it. So I'm not going to bore you with the details. But when we first decided to do this challenge, we had no idea of the actual involvement with the logistics. And anyway, but she's slowly getting there. Luckily, because managing logistics, organizing, is not one of my strengths. And no, this is a moment where I've just lost my way, but bear with me.
No worries. Well, actually, Neil, I wonder if I can just, because I do want to touch a little bit later on the logistics and obviously go into lots of detail on the challenge, but I did, if it's okay, just want to ask you one more question sort of about your Parkinson's and about how you felt after your diagnosis, which I think was back in 2018. You're obviously doing loads of running now, but with the onset of the symptoms, and particularly some of them which sound quite frightening at times, did you ever think, oh, this is a great shame, but running's probably not for me anymore? Or was it always, I'm determined to carry on?
Well, I saw a number of neurologists before I got the actual confirmation of the diagnosis. But thanks to Dr. Google, I already knew well in advance of the diagnosis that I'd got Parkinson's. So it wasn't a surprise or a major shock. Sorry, saying that though, when you hear those words, you have Parkinson's, that is sort of reinforcing it, I guess. And my first words of response were, and this is gospel honest truth, were, can I still carry on running? Because without my running, I need to run. And he said, this is the neurologist, he said that absolutely, by all means, I would encourage it. It's really good for the brain. The brain is a muscle like any other part of the body, and it responds favorably to energetic exercise. So that was reassuring to hear. But even though I knew I'd got Parkinson's before the diagnosis, to actually hear those words, it is quite frightening. And even now, 5 years later, I still sort of think sometimes, have I got Parkinson's? I mean, I can't believe I've got Parkinson's. It's something that old people have. And well, I'm 65, so I'm in the sort of elderly category now. And I even now have to sort of pinch myself to remind myself that I have got Parkinson's. And but saying that, a lot of everyday things which you take for granted normally, I can't do it. Like, for instance, writing. If I wanted to sort of write a little note to my granddaughter in a birthday card, I can't do it. If I want to write an important note down that's important to remember, I can't do it. And it's only when you can't do something like as simple as handwriting that you realize how much you rely on it in everyday life. And whilst it's not life threatening or anything like that, it's still quite difficult to come to terms with. I mean, I've got no sense of smell, or my taste is sense of taste is very, very limited. So I don't get those smells of Sunday roasts anymore, or fresh coffee, or flowers, or with aftershave, for instance, because I've got no idea how it comes over, because I can't smell it. I just store loads of it over me, and of course, you sort of smell me. I mean, at least I smell sweet. But it's a bit overpowering sometimes. So now I have to sort of limit it to two squirts or 2 drops, and I know that's sufficient. So it's not the end of the world, but yeah. So, but on the whole, when I first got the diagnosis, that night I just remember being at home and going through my thoughts, and very quickly the notion, or the a bit of anger, really, I guess, to actually not let Parkinson's rule my life anymore. For as long as I can, I'm still going to do what I want to do. I'm still the boss, and Parkinson's will just have to wait its turn. And the reason I'm so determined to do these sort of things that I do is on a personal level, to sort of stick 2 fingers up to Parkinson's and say, no, I'm not going to sit at home and watch Netflix and just sort of vegetate and lead a sedentary lifestyle because I've got Parkinson's. I am going to do crazy things, and I still do.
Well, you certainly are doing that at the moment with this latest challenge, and you're certainly getting your running in. Do you want to tell people just what it is that you're preparing to take on?
Well, if I step a couple of steps back, when I ran from John O'Groats to Land's End, that had been my whole life for 7 or 8 months, the training and the compete and actually doing the run. I did over 36 back-to-back marathons and covered 948 miles. When I finished it, sorry, can you hear that? The rain is pounding down on the conservatory roof. I don't know whether that's disturbing.
No, it's not coming across, but you are loud and clear.
Well, sorry, I've lost my way again. Where was I?
Somewhere between John O'Groats and Land's End, I think. and just having completed that challenge, thinking what you
when I completed the challenge, I sort of had a bit of post-joggle blues, and I was a bit sort of lost for what to do, because I was no more training, no more planning. It was over. And then I eventually got to the point where I was getting quite down. And then out of nowhere, an invitation came to go to a function at Parkinson's UK, which I attended. There was many speakers there. I don't remember who it was that made this particular speech, but he mentioned the words, the World Parkinson's Congress in Barcelona. And as soon as those words came out of his mouth, I knew immediately what my next challenge was going to be, which was to run from London to Barcelona. No one else knew at that moment in time what it was that I was planning, but that was how it came about. And that was about a year ago. I've been training ever since and planning and managing the whole project. And the plan is to, in 2 weeks' time, May the 25th, we leave Hanover Square in West London, make our way down to Portsmouth, which will be about 2 days. That's running. Catch the ferry across to Caen in northern France, run through France, over the Pyrenees, into the Spanish border, along the Spanish coast, into Barcelona. And that should be arriving on July the 1st, if it all goes to plan.
Yeah, it's an epic journey. I think if my information's correct, it's going to see you traveling over 970 miles in just over 5 weeks, which is a lot of mileage each day. And I know that you've been doing some very, you hinted at it earlier, some very serious training for this, haven't you?
Yeah, well, the last 3 weeks have been 100-mile weeks. I ran 3 back-to-back marathons 3 weeks ago, along with some other high mileage days. Last week, I ran 5 18 miles back-to-back. Today, I've run the second of 28 miles. 28 miles is the average days running I'm going to be doing when I do this London to Barcelona. I'm planning to run about 27 to 28 miles a day. And I'm hoping my running coach is going to start to taper me off a bit, because I'm not going to pretend that I'm not tired, because I am tired, and I would be fibbing if I said I wasn't. So, but I think I'm in probably the best condition I've ever been in, and I'm in better condition than I was when I started John O'Groats to Land's End. So I'm quietly confident, but I am apprehensive. The expectations on me is quite significant, and I'm not sure I want to go into that just now. But there's a lot of people that have supported me, and I have a fear of letting them down. It wouldn't be through my choice of letting them down, but I had a message from a guy in Oregon, in America. He said that he was 71 and he'd recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and that he read about me, and it was such an inspiration for him that he's decided to take up running himself. And he just wanted to sort of thank me for that. And it's people like that I'm doing this for, really, to let them know that it's not the end of the world when you get a diagnosis for Parkinson's. If you've got the right mindset, you can still do amazing things. It doesn't have to be running. It can be whatever it is that you're into. So my message is to anybody that's been recently diagnosed is lead a normal life. Don't give up. Just be determined, and you will get knockbacks. People, and there will be very well-meaning people that will say, no, you shouldn't really be doing that. Are you sure it's wise? And just ignore them and just do it.
Brilliant. And without wishing to put more pressure on you, one of the other reasons you're doing it is to raise money. I think quite a significant amount of money for 2 really wonderful charities as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Don't ask me where the figure came from. It was just a figure that came to me. But I'm hoping to raise £50,000. Whether I do or not, I don't know. But these are tough times for people to find extra cash to make donations to charities. And but I'd like to try and raise £50,000. And my wish is that the money goes into research, because my selfish side of me would like to benefit from it. I'm going to make no bones about that. And if the money can go to research and it can help in finding a cure, then that will be job well done from my part.
Yeah, so I think it's for Parkinson's UK and Cure Parkinson's that you're looking to raise the money for.
Yeah.
Superb. Well, we'll definitely make sure we put your fundraising links in the show notes for this. So if anybody wants to go on, click on those links and sponsor Neil, that would be absolutely fantastic. Neil, just going back to the actual run, when you're out there doing those sort of distances every day, I'm presuming this is going to be a sort of almost an ultra mindset, a run walk kind of way of doing it, rather than going out and sprinting every day.
Well, I certainly don't sprint, believe me. People ask me how I do it, and on a day-to-day basis, and I don't really know, if I'm being honest. I just do it. I have good days, I have bad days. It's linked to all sorts of things. But it's as much a mental challenge as it is a physical one. That is absolutely, the case. If you've got the wrong, you can be physically super fit and strong and have endurance, but if you're mentally not resilient enough, then you're going to struggle. And there's always an injury or a niggle of some description that's nagging away. I mean, I've got a hamstring twitch, and I've got glute problems. I've got lower back problem. One of the things that happens with me with my running is that when I tire, I tend to lean to the right hand side. It's all posture and it's all based around my that's coming out of Parkinson's, and that causes pressure on my glutes and my lower back, and then it goes from there down my leg, and sometimes it's very, very hard on my body, because I mean I'm not a young man anymore. I mean, there's no point pretending that. And if so, you have to be. I found that you have to be prepared to run through the pain, and that's not everybody's cup of tea. But you can't run those sort of distances without injuries and niggles and aches and pains. It's just not. Well, as far as I know, it's not possible.
Absolutely. I think everybody who does those sort of things, who I've spoken to anyway, I can't admit to having done anything like that myself, but people I spoke to on this podcast have all said similar things, that you will have to put up with the pain at some point, and it is that mental strength that keeps you going. But of course, you've done something similar before. You mentioned it earlier, running from John O'Groats to Land's End. I mean, how actually was that experience? Because that's covering some pretty large distances each day as well, isn't it?
Well, the interesting thing is when I first embarked on it, I was always told that Cornwall and Devon were the two hardest counties to run through because they're so hilly, and they were very hilly and they were difficult. But it wasn't, in my opinion, and from what I experienced, the most challenging county to run through in terms of the demands on your body. This might come as a bit of a surprise, but Shropshire I found really, really difficult, because they weren't long, big, steep hills, but they were constantly undulating up and down, and it was unrelenting. And I found at the end of the day that probably took more out of me than any other of the counties. That includes the Highlands in Scotland, and yeah, so that was quite an interesting thing. But the biggest issue I had, and the thing I learned probably to my cost, was the safety aspect. Running on busy main roads, it's not the safest place to be, and it caused a lot of problems with us having to change the routes, because when you're on the ground near to a particular place, you find out which roads are particularly busy with heavy traffic, because some of ththese roads, they have no pavements or verges to jump onto if there's vehicles coming, and if they don't see you, you've got a bit of a problem. So so we learned an awful lot about route planning, about how important it is to get the route right, particularly when you've got safety as your overriding paramount priority. And I had a couple of very close shaves. I was running around Loch Lomond up in Scotland, and it was a beautiful day, and the road was very straight and plenty of verges and pavements to sort of run onto if there was a problem. But as we got onto the road around Loch Lomond, bends started to appear. And of course, the trouble with bends is that you can't see what's coming the other way. So if you've got somewhere to jump onto, like a pavement or a verge, then it's not too much of a problem. You can get out of the way. But when we got to Loch Lomond, there were a series of 8 miles of continuous S-bends. And on one side of the road, they had a granite rock face with nowhere to get off the road. Then on the other side, you had crash barriers. And they had these huge Arctics carrying timber from the woods where they'd been felling trees. And these lorries were coming around these bends, and there was just nowhere to get out of the way of them. And they were so close to me that I actually genuinely thought I was going to become roadkill. And you could see the rivets in the trailer as the lorries passed. They were inches away. And I was genuinely, I was quite scared. I don't mind admitting it. And I was thinking, what the hell am I doing here? This is ridiculous. I mean, it's not worth it risking your life. But I was already there. There was no way of getting off it. And so that was probably some of the fastest running I've ever done, that 8 miles, because my objective was just to get off that sequence, that section of road as quickly as possible and as safely as possible. And eventually I got through it okay. But if I'd known about those bends, it would have been factored in to go another route, even if it had meant an extra 5 or 6 miles out of my way. There were moments when I wasn't sure what was going on. For instance, I picked up a stress fracture in my right foot. We were talking earlier about pain, and my legs swelled up, and it was so bad that we nearly had to call it off, but I carried on, and it was so painful. Every time my foot hit the road, it felt like somebody was sticking a knife in my leg. My eyes would water up, and the pain was just unbearable. But I kept going, and I wasn't sure how long I could keep going. But I was determined to finish it. This was down in the West Country, and one night, then just when I was getting really quite depressed about it all, I suddenly had this miraculous thing happened. I woke up the next morning, one morning, and pain had gone. I had no idea why. The stress fracture had gone away. The swelling was still there, but the pain just went. And so that was great, because then I could just carry on running at my normal pace. But yeah, I have no idea why that happened, but the whole joggle experience taught me and my partner an awful lot about us and the things you need to get right. Your nutrition, is critical, because when I was into my sort of early phases of the challenge, I was tiring very, very early on, and I was not happy with how it was all going. And then after a lot of discussion with my coach and a few other people, it was decided that I wasn't eating enough, and I had to start quadrupling my food intake, literally become an eating machine. And I don't know about other endurance runners. I don't have much of an appetite when I'm running. I don't know why, but it's just the way I am. So I was having to be force-fed food, which normally I would love and I would happily consume, but I knew I had to eat more to keep my energy levels up. The demands on the body were so extreme that I think I was burning 7,000 or 8,000 calories a day, and you got to replace that somehow with something. So it would be, for me, egg sandwiches, peanut butter sandwiches, just constantly eating. I don't mind admitting it, eating rubbish sometimes, cakes, biscuits, crisps, just anything that had some goodness in it to sort of keep me going. And on August the 21st, I think it was, I eventually arrived in Land's End. I had 36 miles to do on the last day, because we messed up a few places earlier on, and we had to make up the time, because we discovered that Land's End closes at 5:30 on a Sunday, and it was a Sunday that we were running there. And so again, I don't know how I did it. I just ran quicker and got the 36 miles cracked and arrived in Land's End.
And given that sort of journey, dodging lorries and battling with nutrition and injuries and so on, how did you feel? And not to mention your Parkinson's in the first place, how did you feel when you got to Land's End? You must have felt fantastic. It must have been an amazing sense of achievement.
Well, this is the big surprise. I had a lot of followers down there and people supporting me, friends, family. There were tears from all of my friends and family, and hugs and kisses and all sorts of things like that. And I was the only one that didn't shed a tear. And I was a bit sort of, what's going on here? I've just run from A to B. That's all, really. I haven't really, I haven't saved anyone's life or anything or done anything that amazing. And I didn't quite get it, what I had done. And this is despite everybody else being so emotional. But then 3 or 4 months later, I was at home watching the TV and the weather forecast came up and they had a big map of the United Kingdom. And I just all of a sudden, the reality of it hit me. I just saw the distance from John O'Groats to Land's End and I thought, wow, I've ran that. And I got quite emotional. And that was my moment to shed a tear.
It's not an uncommon thing, actually. I've spoken to other people who've got to the end of sort of epic journeys, and they've one lady ran across, I think, New Zealand. Another chap I spoke to ran across Africa, and they both got to the end and sort of, I suppose, did that Forrest Gump thing where they sort of look a bit blank and then go, "What do I do now?" And some of them turned around and ran back, but a lot of them was like, "Okay, I better go home." And it's a weird thing, isn't it?
People thought I was being a bit mean and moody or a bit weird or a bit odd because I didn't get the big emotional rush that all my friends and family were experiencing. And but it just took me a bit longer to sort of process it, really. And it was that realization when I was sitting watching the weather forecast and seeing the United Kingdom and just looking at the distance between John O'Groats and Land's End, that the reality of it then hit me. And I do remember the one thing that struck me. My father passed away a year and a half or so beforehand, and he would have been so proud of me to have been there and see me do it. And when I touched the line, when I finally finished, I said, "That's for you, Dad." That was the only thing I remember that actually caused any emotion in me. I mean, I was smiling and I was happy. I mean, I wasn't sort of miserable or glum or anything. It was just that I think emotions affect people in different ways, don't they? And I tend to keep my emotions bottled up, and that's just the way I am.
Well, Neil, I mean, I think everybody would say it's a fantastic achievement. I'm sure your dad, if he's looking down, will think it's amazing, and he'd be really proud of you for what you've done there, and also what you're going to do with this run to Barcelona as well. So we wish you all the very best with it, and thank you so much for joining us today on the Running Tales podcast.
You're welcome.
Thanks again to Neil Russell for joining me today on the Running Tales podcast. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode as much as I did. And if you did, leave us those vital reviews and ratings wherever you listen to the podcast. Now, if you did enjoy Neil's story, you might also be interested in our recent chat with Gary Shaughnessy. Gary was diagnosed with Parkinson's back in 2015 and has since done a number of incredible challenges, including completing the Arc to Arc triathlon, dubbed the hardest in the world. Gary is also now the chair of the Board of Trustees of Parkinson's UK, as well as doing a similar role at England Athletics. On a similar subject, might well be worth you having a listen back to Tony Collier's story. In November last year, we spoke to Tony about how his incurable prostate cancer diagnosis has inspired him to keep on raising awareness and keep on running. Prior to his diagnosis, Tony had completed all of the marathon majors. He'd finished the Comrades Ultra Marathon in South Africa and was actually trained to do that event again. And although he wasn't able to do that, he hasn't allowed his cancer to stop him from running at all. He completed a 5-kilometre run or a hike every day last year, an incredible running streak, and raised a lot of money at the same time. And he has also completed ultra races since then. So go back, have a little listen to Tony's story as well. One last thing before I go, if you enjoy the Running Tales podcast, you'll probably also enjoy our newsletter and website on Substack. You can subscribe to get full access to that newsletter sent direct to your inbox for just £5. We also have a 3 membership option. Simply visit runningtales.substack.com to get even more from your Running Tales experience. In the meantime, we'll have another podcast again for you next week, so I look forward to seeing you then.